Go ahead and comment out the call to the draw progress animation dark method and add a couple blank lines below it. Now let's add the call to the method that allows us to pass in parameters. In the frame parameter, just enter bounds, which describes the view's location and size in its own coordinate system. Notice that bounds is of type CG rect. Set resizing to aspect fit. This will override the defaults and scale our animation to fit our UI view. Now you also see we have 3 progress parameters. These are the parameters that actually drive our progress rings in our animation. For now, let's put 0.5 in all 3 of them. A little later in our tutorial, we will be passing in the position of our UI sliders to adjust the ring's progress value. We now have values in all of the required parameters, so let's run the application in our simulator and take a look at what we got so far. The animation should be the full size of the UI view and all 3 progress rings should be at the 50% point. Now let's go back to our Views Swift file and finish adding the required code that will allow us to pass a value into our rings to control their progress. Let's start out by creating 3 private variables at the top of the file, somewhere above the draw method. The first private variable will be named _inner progress with a type of CG float and a default value of 0.0. The second private variable will be named _middle progress with a type of CG float and a default value of 0.0. The third private variable will be named _outer progress with a type of CG float and a default value of 0.0. Now we need to create variables that will actually drive our progress rings. These variables will contain a getter and a setter as well as some validation that will prevent our progress ring from going less than 0% and no more than 100%. These variables will be of type CG float since that is what is required by our animation method, and they will have closures, which will house all of our getter and setter code. So let's go ahead and add a little more blank space between our private variables and the draw method. Now let's create our first variable that we will be using as a parameter value within our progress animation method. Name the variable progress_inner with a type of CG float and don't forget to add the closures. Now let's create our setter within our progress_inner variable. So go ahead and pause the video while you enter the code as shown. We also need to redraw the rectangle every time the value changes, so we need to add the setNeedsDisplayed method to the setter. Now let's add the getter to our variable. Let's take a moment and discuss how the variable works with a getter and setter. Also take a moment to confirm that your code looks the same. We will start out with the setter functionality. The new inner progress is the current value of the UISlider position. It will then check to see if the value of new inner progress is greater than 1. If it is, it will set the _inner progress variable to 1.0. If the new inner progress value is less than 0, it will then set the _inner progress variable to 0. If the new inner progress value is between 0 and 1, the _inner progress variable will be set to value of new inner progress. Once all the validation is completed, the view will be redrawn by the call of the setNeedsDisplay method. Now for the getter functionality. The only thing that is happening here is that the value of the _inner progress variable will be returned to the progress animation view. Now let's create our second variable with the name of progress_middle with a type of CG float and don't forget to add the closures. Now create the getter and setter within the progress_middle variable as we did in the progress_inner variable. We will just be referencing middle instead of inner. Go ahead and pause the video while you enter the code as shown. Now let's create our third and final variable with the name of progress_outer with a type of CG float, and once again, don't forget to add the closures. Now create the getter and setter within the progress_outer variable as we did in the progress_inner variable. We will just be referencing outer instead of inner. Go ahead and pause the video while you enter the code as shown. We are now going to connect our sliders to the animation view, so go ahead and select the view controller.swift, scroll down to the IB action named outer progress made and add a few blank lines within the methods. Now let's go ahead and connect the slider to the outer ring in our animation. This is done by setting the progress_outer variable within our progress animation dark class with the current position of the slider while casting it as a CG float. So go ahead and pause the video while you enter the code as shown. Let's go ahead and do the same thing for the second slider, but referencing the progress_middle variable and the middle slider, which is named slider middle progress. So go ahead and pause the video while you enter the code as shown. Last but not least, let's do the same for the third and final slider, referencing the progress inner variable in the inner slider, which is named slider inner progress. So go ahead and pause the video while you enter the code as shown. We have one last code change that must take place before we can drive the rings in our animation with the sliders. Select the activity progress gauge view Swift file and scroll down to the draw method. As you can see, the progress parameters are still hard-coded with the value of 0.5. We need to remove those values and replace them with their corresponding progress variables from above in this file. So go ahead and pause the video while you update your progress parameters as shown. Now that we have everything connected, let's run our project in the simulator and see what we got. Isn't that cool? We can now control each of the progress rings with their corresponding slider. Now let's wrap this tutorial up by making our sliders look a little nicer by using the colors that we exported from PaintCode. If we were creating our colors in Xcode via the color picker, we could change the tint colors of our slider in the attribute inspector via the minimum track, maximum track and thumb tint. But since our colors are within the code we exported from PaintCode, we will set the tint colors programmatically. So select the view controller.swift file and scroll to just below the view.didLoad method. Let's go ahead and make a little room and create a new method called setSliderColors. Now let's begin with assigning the colors to the slider named sliderOuterProgress. So go ahead and assign the outer ring 1 color to the minimum value of the slider track. We will then assign the outer ring tint color to the maximum value of the slider track. Now let's assign the outer ring 1 color to the thumb tint color. Once that is done, we can do the same thing for the slider middle progress slider. Just reference slider middle progress, middle ring 1 and middle ring tint color. Let's go ahead and repeat the steps one last time for the slider inner progress. Just reference slider inner progress, inner ring 1 and inner ring tint color. Now let's call the setSliderColor method from within the view.didLoad method. That should be everything, so let's run our project in the simulator one last time and take a look at all the hard work that we have done. As you can see, our slider is not only driving their corresponding activity progress rings, the color of the ring also matches the color of the slider. Well, that's about it. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. You should be very proud of yourself. Not only did you create a rather complex PaintCode animation project, you successfully created an iOS application. The iOS application not only displays your PaintCode animation, it also allows you to control the progress of each ring with the help of a UISlider. If you like this tutorial, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Also feel free to post any questions or comments you may have in the comments section and I will try to reply as soon as possible. You can also find links to supporting content in the section below. If you find value to this tutorial, please feel free to donate via one of the methods below to help fund additional content and support one of my many habits. Thanks for watching and I hope you have a good day.